When we say that God is the foundation, what we are really declaring is that He is the bedrock of everything that holds your life together. A house without a foundation will crumble under pressure, a tree without roots will be blown away by the storm, and a soul without God will collapse under the weight of trials. Life will test you, it will stretch you, it will pull you in directions that make you question who you are. But when you know that God is your foundation, there is a stability that nothing else in this world can give. You may lose friends, you may lose money, you may lose opportunities, but if you are rooted in God, you will still stand because He is not just the beginning of your life. He is the sustaining power that keeps you when everything else falls apart. Think about how many people build their entire lives on things that do not last. Some build on success, but success fades. Some build on relationships, but relationships can break. Some build on popularity, but the crowd that cheers you today can turn against you tomorrow. Yet when you build on God, you are not building on shifting sand, you are building on the rock of ages. That means when the rain falls, when the wind blows, when the storm rages, you might bend, but you will not break. You might stumble, but you will not fall, because your foundation is secure. It is not dependent on the approval of others. It is not dependent on the size of your bank account. It is not dependent on your achievements. It is dependent on the one who never changes, the one who is the same yesterday, today, and forever. There is a reason why Jesus taught that the wise man built his house upon the rock. The wise man knew that storms were coming. He knew that life would not always be smooth. He knew that winds would eventually beat against the walls, and so he prepared by building on something unshakable. That is what God offers when you make Him your foundation. He does not promise that the winds will not come, but He promises that you will still be standing after they pass. He does not promise that you will never feel the rain, but He promises that you will not be swept away by it. Stability does not come from what you see around you. It comes from who you are connected to beneath you. So many people live in fear of what tomorrow will bring, but fear has no dominion over the one whose foundation is God. You may not know what tomorrow holds, but you know who holds tomorrow. You may not see the entire path ahead, but you know that your steps are ordered by the Lord. That gives you a confidence that cannot be explained to people who do not understand it. They see you smiling when everything looks broken. They see you moving forward when it looks like you should have quit. They see you holding your peace when they expected you to lash out. And they do not realize that the reason you can stand is because you are not standing on yourself. You are standing on Him. If you've ever seen a building under construction, you know that the most important and often the most time-consuming part is laying the foundation. Workers dig deep, they pour cement, they reinforce it with steel. They make sure it is strong enough to carry the weight that will eventually rise above it. God works the same way in your life. Sometimes the digging is uncomfortable. Sometimes it feels like He is pulling things out of you that you thought you needed. Sometimes it feels like He is delaying what you have been praying for. But He is not punishing you. He is laying the foundation. Because if the foundation is not strong, the blessings will crush you. If the foundation is not strong, the success will destroy you. If the foundation is not strong, the calling will overwhelm you. God builds from the ground up, and He starts by making sure you are deeply rooted in Him. The truth is, foundations are often hidden. When you look at a tall building, you do not see the foundation. You see the structure, the design, the glass windows, the beautiful lights. But the hidden part beneath the surface is what keeps everything else standing. That is how God works. People may not see the prayers you pray in the midnight hour. They may not see the tears you cry when no one is around. They may not see the faith it takes to keep moving when you feel like quitting, but God sees it. The unseen foundation is what gives power to the visible life. It is not about how good you look on the outside. It is about how deep you are anchored on the inside. When you know that God is your foundation, you stop living for validation from others. You are not shaken by people leaving you. You are not discouraged by people doubting you, because you realize that your stability was never tied to them in the first place. They can walk away, they can talk about you, they can misunderstand you, but you still stand because your foundation is not based on them, it is based on Him. What He says about you carries more weight than what anyone else thinks of you. What He builds in you cannot be destroyed by what others try to take from you. That is why you can go through loss and still rise again, because your foundation is God. That is why you can go through heartbreak and still love again, because your foundation is God. That is why you can face storms and still keep your faith, because your foundation is God. You are not defined by the storms you face. You are defined by the foundation that holds you through them. A storm might move your emotions, but it cannot move your anchor. A storm might shake your plans, but it cannot shake your God. A storm might break your expectations, but it cannot break your destiny. When you truly embrace God as your foundation, you begin to see life differently. Challenges no longer look like barriers, they look like opportunities to trust Him deeper. Failures no longer look like endings, they look like redirections towards something greater. Waiting no longer feels like punishment, it feels like preparation. Because you realize that everything that happens to you is resting on a foundation that will not fail. Even if you don't understand it in the moment, you trust that the foundation is strong enough to hold it all together. And so every day you wake up, you remind yourself, I am not standing on shaky ground, I am not standing on sinking sand, I am not standing on temporary things. I am standing on the everlasting God, the unmovable rock, the eternal foundation that cannot be destroyed. And because He is holding me, I can endure, I can rise, I can press forward, I can live with hope. I can stand firm knowing that nothing and no one can take away the ground beneath my feet. When we declare that God is the guide, we are saying that He is not just watching from a distance, He is intimately involved in directing every step of our journey. Life is not a straight path, it is a winding road filled with turns you did not expect, valleys you never asked for, and mountains that look too high to climb. Without a guide, you can get lost, discouraged, and overwhelmed. But when God is your guide, you are never truly lost even if you do not recognize where you are. He sees the end from the beginning. He knows the shortcuts and the long roads. He knows when to push you forward and when to keep you still. And He is always leading you toward the place of promise even when you do not see the promise yet. Think about how powerful it is to be led by God. Human wisdom can only see so far, human advice can only reach so deep, but God's guidance stretches beyond what eyes can see and ears can hear. He knows where danger lies, He knows what traps the enemy has set, He knows what opportunities will bless you and which ones will break you. Many times people ask God for blessings but do not ask for direction, and that is why blessings can turn into burdens. A blessing without God's guidance is a setup for frustration, but with His guidance every blessing comes in season, every opportunity comes at the right time, and every step you take moves you closer to your destiny instead of further away. There is a reason David said, "The Lord is my shepherd." A shepherd is not passive, a shepherd leads, protects, and directs the flock. Sheep are not strong enough to fight wolves, not smart enough to find safe paths on their own, and not wise enough to know when to stop and when to move. That is why they need a shepherd. We too are like sheep, vulnerable to temptation, prone to wander, often distracted by what looks good but is not good for us. But when God is your shepherd, when He is your guide, you may wander off, but he pulls you back. You may stumble, but he picks you up. You may not know which way to go, but he directs you with a staff of love and correction. The challenge for many of us is not that God is not guiding, but that we resist his guidance. Sometimes his path does not look like what we expected. Sometimes he leads us through valleys instead of around them. Sometimes he tells us to wait when we want to run, and it frustrates us because we think we know better. But guidance requires trust. You cannot follow someone unless you believe they know the way better than you. And God does not just know the way, he is the way. His guidance is not a GPS that recalculates when you make a wrong turn. His guidance is a divine plan that takes even your wrong turns and weaves them into the right story. Think back on your life and remember the times when you thought you were lost, yet somehow you ended up in a better place. You thought the door that closed was the end, but it made room for something greater. You thought the relationship that ended would destroy you, but it led you to discover strength in yourself that you never knew you had. That was not coincidence, that was guidance. God's guidance often does not make sense in the moment, but it makes perfect sense in hindsight. He leads you in ways that confuse your logic, but perfect your faith. Sometimes God guides us through whispers, through that still small voice that speaks peace when everything else feels chaotic. Sometimes he guides us through circumstances, closing doors we would have walked through, opening ones we never thought possible. Sometimes he guides us through people, placing mentors, leaders, and friends in our lives at just the right moment. But no matter how he guides, the truth is that he never leaves us without direction. You may not always see the map, but you can always trust the hand of the one who holds it. When God is your guide, you can walk through darkness without fear, because you know he is the light unto your path. You can face uncertainty without anxiety, because you know he already wrote your future. You can walk into places others would avoid, because you know his rod and his staff comfort you. This does not mean the path will always be easy, but it does mean the path will always be purposeful. Every step you take, every delay you face, every detour you encounter has meaning when God is guiding you. Nothing is wasted, no tear is wasted, no setback is wasted, because all of it is part of the path he is using to shape you. Guidance also requires surrender. You cannot ask God to guide you and then argue with every direction he gives. You cannot ask him to lead and then complain when he takes you through uncomfortable places. Following God means trusting him even when the route is not what you would have chosen. Think of Israel walking through the wilderness. God guided them with a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. They did not control when it moved or when it stopped. They simply had to follow. That is what guidance looks like. Moving when he says move, stopping when he says stop, trusting that he knows where he is taking you even when you do not. And sometimes his guidance will protect you from things you never knew were coming. There are accidents you avoided because God guided your steps a different way. There are people you never met because God kept them out of your path. There are opportunities you thought you missed that would have destroyed you if you had taken them. His guidance is not just about getting you to your destination. It is about keeping you safe along the way. When you embrace God as your guide, you begin to walk with confidence, not confidence in yourself, but confidence in him. You stop worrying about tomorrow because you know the one leading you already holds tomorrow. You stop stressing about detours because you know he can make crooked paths straight. You stop living in regret over past mistakes because you know even your wrong turns cannot cancel his plan. You walk with a peace that passes understanding because you know your steps are ordered by the Lord. And it is not just about where He is taking you, it is also about who you are becoming along the way. Guidance is not just directional, it is transformational. While God is guiding you toward destiny, He is also shaping your character, teaching you patience, building your faith, and deepening your trust. The journey is not just about the destination, it is about the growth that happens as you follow. Every valley teaches you resilience. Every mountain teaches you perseverance. Every closed door teaches you obedience, and every open door teaches you gratitude. So when you say, "God is my guide," you are declaring that you will not walk by sight, you will walk by faith. You are declaring that you will not lean on your own understanding, but in all your ways you will acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. You are declaring that you trust His timing, you trust His wisdom, you trust His love, and you trust His plan. Even when it hurts, even when it is slow, even when it feels unclear, you know that His guidance is leading you to something greater than you could ever lead yourself into. When we say that God is the strength, we are not talking about some abstract idea or poetic phrase. We are declaring that He is the very power that holds you up when you are too weak to hold yourself. Life has a way of draining strength out of you. Responsibilities, disappointments, pressures, and unexpected storms will leave you weary in body, mind, and soul. You can look strong on the outside, smiling, dressed well, appearing confident, but on the inside you can be exhausted, weighed down and ready to collapse. That is why you need God as your strength. Because when your strength runs out, His strength takes over. When your energy is depleted, His power becomes the fuel that carries you forward. When you cannot, He can, and that is why Paul said, "When I am weak, then I am strong." Because God's strength is perfected in weakness. Think about how many times you have faced situations that should have broken you, but you are still here. You went through battles that should have crushed you, but somehow you rose again. You endured nights of tears that should have drowned you in despair, but somehow you found the courage to face another day. That was not just you being resilient. That was the strength of God working in you and through you. Human strength has limits, but divine strength has no boundaries. Human strength gets tired, but divine strength is everlasting. Human strength depends on circumstances, but divine strength transcends them. When you walk in the strength of God, you begin to understand that your survival is not by chance. It is by grace. You are not standing because of how tough you are. You are standing because of how strong He is. That realization humbles you, but it also empowers you because it means you do not have to carry life alone. You do not have to pretend you have it all together. You do not have to force yourself to keep smiling when everything inside of you feels broken. You can admit your weakness and still walk with power because His strength covers where you fall short. One of the most dangerous lies the world teaches is that you have to be strong all by yourself, that vulnerability is weakness, that asking for help makes you less. But the truth of the kingdom is the opposite. God says, "Lean on me." He says, "Call upon me in the day of trouble." He says, "Cast your burdens on me, for I care for you." Strength is not about pretending you don't struggle. Strength is about knowing where to turn when you struggle. Real strength is not independence. It is dependence on God. The strongest people are not those who never cry. They are those who cry out to God and receive His strength in their tears. When you let God be your strength, you will discover that He empowers you not only to endure storms, but to grow through them. His strength is not just a shield, it is also a teacher. In your weakness, you learn reliance. In your battles, you learn perseverance. In your valleys, you learn faith. Every moment you feel powerless is an opportunity to experience His power more deeply. That is why some of the most powerful testimonies come from people who have been through the hardest struggles. They speak with authority not because they never fell, but because when they fell, God lifted them up. Consider David, who fought Goliath not with human strength, but with divine strength. A shepherd boy with no armor and no experience in battle, yet with God as his strength, he brought down a giant that armies were too afraid to face. That same principle applies in your life. You may feel unqualified, unequipped, and overwhelmed, but when you rely on God's strength, you can conquer giants that seem impossible. The size of the obstacle does not matter when the one empowering you is greater than anything in the world. God's strength also gives you endurance. Life is not a sprint, it is a marathon. It is not about how fast you can run when things are easy. It is about how long you can keep going when things get hard. Human strength gets weary, but Isaiah reminds us that those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not grow weary. They shall walk and not faint. That means God's strength is not a one-time boost. It is a continual renewal. Every time you feel like quitting, He breathes new energy into you. Every time you feel like collapsing, He lifts you up again. Every time you feel like the journey is too long, He reminds you that His grace is sufficient. There is also a peace that comes when you let God be your strength. Anxiety weakens you, fear drains you, worry exhausts you, but when you rest in His strength, you find calm in the middle of chaos. You stop panicking about what you cannot control because you know the one in control cannot be shaken. You stop trying to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders because you realize His shoulders are broader than yours. His strength gives you rest, not just resilience. His strength gives you calm, not just courage. His strength gives you confidence, not in yourself, but in Him. And when His strength becomes your strength, you begin to see yourself differently. You stop identifying yourself by your weaknesses and start identifying yourself by His power. You stop saying, "I can't do this," and start declaring, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." You stop fearing challenges and start embracing them as opportunities to witness His strength in action. You stop dreading storms and start recognizing that storms reveal the anchor you are tied to. His strength becomes your identity, your testimony, your hope, and your song. Even in your moments of greatest weakness, when you feel like you have nothing left, His strength shows up in unexpected ways. It might be through a word that lifts your spirit when you were ready to give up. It might be through a person who shows up to encourage you when you thought you were all alone. It might be through a peace that suddenly floods your heart when you were drowning in fear. His strength manifests in both small and mighty ways, reminding you that you are never without help. And sometimes God's strength is not about giving you the power to escape the storm, but the power to stand in it. Sometimes His strength does not remove the thorn, but sustains you while you carry it. Sometimes His strength does not take away the challenge, but equips you to endure it with grace. Because strength is not just about victory, it is about resilience. It is about knowing that even if the mountain does not move, you will still climb. Even if the door does not open, you will still trust. Even if the battle does not end quickly, you will still fight with faith because you are not fighting in your own power. God's strength also prepares you for what is coming. Some seasons of life are preparation seasons where He strengthens you quietly before a greater assignment. You may wonder why you are going through pressure, why you are facing resistance, why you are enduring weight that feels unbearable, but in reality, He is strengthening you for what lies ahead. Just like a tree's roots grow deeper during the storm, your spiritual strength grows stronger in adversity. He is preparing you for greater battles, greater responsibilities, greater blessings, and greater victories. And so, when you live in the truth that God is your strength, you no longer fear being weak. Weakness becomes a doorway for His power. Struggles become opportunities for His glory. Trials become testimonies of His sustaining grace. You stop living in the illusion that you must hold everything together and start living in the reality that He holds you together. His strength is not just enough, it is more than enough. His strength is not temporary, it is eternal. His strength is not conditional, it is constant.